All right, here we are. We've been
We're
gathered
together again.
together again.
We're together again. Just
Yeah, it's so
praising.
fun. Well, last time we were together here in Sandpoint, so it's good to have us
All
all
together in
on the
Sandpoint.
call and back together again. And so good to be here. Mark, you're back home, all the way back in
Yeah.
Australia.
I am back in Australia. Yes, I'm back into the land of the cold weather.
Because you're in the tropical cold weather. Is that how that works there in Tasmania? Tropical cold weather.
Well, it's actually not tropical. It's temperate. It wouldn't be cold as some of what you guys know to be cold, but it feels cold. So,
Well, we bless your being in the cold now. So
yeah, it's all right. Yeah. It's okay. I'll just back up.
Good. Malvina, how's the weather in San Diego?
The same.
As always.
It's same.
Actually, no, it's May gray.
Boring.
Boring. We don't see the sunshine, so we're all depressed. And we're waiting for June gloom. Okay, it's what we call it. May gray, June gloom.
Oh my goodness. Well, we know why you don't live in Seattle or Portland. Okay. So.
Correct.
Yes. And Peter, your next week begins the sabbatical for you, right? So you've been blessed by your leadership team to get some time to just rest and pray and enter into your next season with some strength on your plate. Yep. So what are you looking forward to the most about your sabbatical?
Oh, time with the family and fly fishing. Just having some time off. And
you're gonna fly fish?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. What a surprise. So we're going next week, starts our sabbatical, and we get to go to Pencil. Go ahead, Mark.
I want to see pictures. I want to see pictures of the flies that you catch. That's what I want to see.
I knew it was coming. Oh my gosh. Some people fish for fish, but we fish for flies. No, we're really looking forward to it. We're super blessed by the opportunity. We're going to have 3 months to rest and recuperate and strengthen. And so yeah, this, hey, Annalie, so I'll be with you guys live this week and next week, but then taking some time off from the lives, sort of in the spirit of the sabbatical. Us preachers, I feel like I have to be diligent to set myself apart from speaking publicly. It's so easy to step onto a stage, so to speak, and to share. But I think part of the refreshing part is, as pastors, our hearts, and as ministers, our hearts are ours, but they're also other people's. Like the Lord puts words into our hearts beyond what we need for ourselves. And so we're like incubating words for ourselves, but we're also incubating words sometimes that are for other people. I mean, I've had times where God's brought me through something for 2 or 3 days and given me a deep revelation about something. I'm like, where did that come from? And then I have a conversation with someone. I'm like, it was for them. Wasn't even for me. He showed me the spirit of something. He showed me how to address something. He gave me breakthrough in it temporarily so that I could give it almost as a word of knowledge to someone else. And so I think that, there's something powerful about letting the ground go fallow every 7 years.
Yeah.
So this is the end of my 7th year, and we're excited for that.
I tried not talking once.
Now that day I wasn't there. I haven't seen that.
It wasn't very successful.
But Peter, what you just said, when I was in Sandpoint, I think I shared with the guys, I don't know if I shared this publicly, but I call it the weekend of you have no idea. There was so much that happened to me. My dreams and words that I have carried with me for years and it made no sense. Getting there, everything made sense. And I have to tell you, somebody gave me a word while I was there that said, go weigh yourself. I think you lost some weight. But I really felt like I lost spiritual weight.
Wow.
Because, said, we harbor and carry those burdens and revelation. I get too much and I carry it, but sometimes it doesn't make sense. But Sandpoint was a place where a lot of the pieces for me, for years, decades, clicked. And it was a blessing to let a portion of my brain rest.
Yes, what a great time.
So good. Well, and I know that we, our people up here have just been excited about what the future has in store, because I know that Malvina is going to be doing some stuff up here with us, which would be great.
Wow.
And that's not surprising, because one of the things we talked about Sandpoint was that it's a place where things come together. You know, you have the meeting of the rails, the rail tracks come together. You have the waters coming together. You have the mountain and the lake coming together. You have the place where the eagles come. You have all of those things
come together.
Come
you have
together.
all these Canada, and you have Montana, and I mean so many parts. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and something that might be of interest is that the Kalispel tribe, the Native American tribe, they had what they called myth weaver boats, these special boats that they would use to go up the river and down the river and into this area. And this was a spot where 5 different Sandpoint where the beach is, right? The Sandpoint was the gathering place every summer for 5 tribes. It was not actually the ground of any actual tribe. It's where they gathered to trade.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Where they
so
they came together.
First in the natural, then in the spirit. So we decree that
come on,
a gathering of tribes over there.
Yep. So we're gonna say hi to Kim. We're gonna say hi to Kim Smith. We're gonna say hi to Abraham, and of course Anna Lee and Dave gave the hellos early. Anna Lee says that she's looking forward to a couple of weeks in June, and she's gonna have a little time like that.
That's great.
Us. Yep. My time away from ministry changed my life. Mine was, I was in desperate need of that time away. But I think that one of the pastors that I've known for years, he would do his sabbatical, and what he would do is he would go interview every retired pastor he could find. And so he would just spend part of his sabbatical interviewing old retired ministers, just to glean wisdom, and would come back so refreshed and revived from that. So,
smart.
So, yeah, it's good. But you're going to do some fly fishing and nothing public. So,
little trips.
With that being said, with nothing public, Peter, you're not going to be on our calls during your sabbatical public calls here. We're going to still talk, but you're going to be off of here. So we will miss you.
Yes. I'll look forward to being back in September.
Yeah. You go ahead, Mark.
Well, one of the things that we were talking about at Sandpoint, and we were talking about today too, was this thing that I think most people keep battling all of the time is intimidation. It's one of the weapons of the enemy, and what I find happens is that when you least expect it, it seems to raise its ugly head. We see it with Elijah after he's defeated the prophets of Baal, and it comes powerfully against him. And I think there must come a place, or must come a time where it has least effect upon you. And when you start to recognize it a little bit. But I wonder if we could, just chat a little bit about that today, because I think most people get intimidated at some stage by something. Some people it's it's mixed in with fear, so they're intimidated when they have to speak publicly. That's not so much our issue, but it comes in a different form. So
it can be.
What do you think?
It can be, though. It depends on what you have to say, right? Because I think certain words come with intimidation, because the word has so much weight and power on it. The word has so much weight on it that the spirit of intimidation wants to stop you from saying it. So sometimes, even though we don't have a problem public speaking, we got to still deal with that. One of the things that I was thinking about, Mark, as you were talking about that I was just, I think that often our fear of man will be that an open door for intimidation. Because the less we experience the fear of man, the less intimidated we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, Chris, fear of men, but I would say also lack of vision. If you think of Apostle Paul, I love the fact that he knew these people are not going to like me. And trust me, he was intimidated. I mean, the book of Acts is loaded with examples of Paul going somewhere, and my goodness, they will come and threaten him and tell him all kinds of things. And I love the one of the shipwreck, which is, you know, everybody preaches on that one. But he knew, listen, it doesn't really matter what happens. I have to get there. And I think sometimes if you know I have to get there, if I was sent with this word, even I'm not saying after you don't go and crawl under a rock, okay? But if you know the Lord sent you and you have the fear of the Lord, not the fear of man, you will do it regardless. You will confront the people and you do it. After you, then you have to deal with your own mess, which I think is some of the things we
that does
about
happen sometimes.
Offline.
Yeah.
But really, if we know God spoke and you have to do it, even though your message may be not welcome or
I think
people.
Yeah, I think the term that I often use is being convinced. You know, that's why I talk about you know, Joshua and Caleb. You know, could come and stand up against all of the people that were going. So no, we can't go into the promised land. It's because they were convinced that God said something.
Correct.
You know, they were convinced that God said this land is yours. So they weren't looking for. You know, so I think that your vision determines. Not only the fact is that you keep pressing through on that, but you see it from a different perspective. And I think that's a really key thing. So
So let's say hi to Kevin from Cabo. We're glad you're enjoying Cabo.
It's 90 degrees.
I got nothing else to say about that. Hey Don, it's good to see you. Always a pleasure.
Yes.
Fahrenheit.
32 Fahrenheit probably, or Celsius or something probably.
Goodness, why did you guys speak in the language everybody else speaks in?
So it's by the way, I keep muting myself because it's bedtime here and the kids are being loud. So I'm trying not to.
Hey man, the speakers. No problem with kids.
We're used to.
Oh man, it's funny. I'm laughing about it. So this intimidation thing, I remember Nehemiah is one of my favorite books of the Bible. And I feel like intimidation is one of the main plot lines there. Obviously building is one of the plot lines, but another really main plot line from the leadership perspective is intimidation. And it's so fascinating because it's like the first bit of intimidation was asking the king for what he needed. You know, there was the like a fear of death nearly on him of like, I need some time off. And so he tells him he needs time off. Then he gets the resources and the safe passage to build. And then he asks people to join him in the building. They've got a mind to work. And the very next verse in Nehemiah chapter 2 is so significant. And then so the people say, let us rise up and build. They set their hands to this good work. Next verse, but when Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite official, and Geshem the Arab heard of it, they laughed at us and despised us and said, what is this thing you are doing? Will you rebel against the king? And then there's just this storyline, as we all know, where there's intimidation, there's accusation, there's attempted distraction, there's threats, there's like just all of the things that spirit of intimidation tries to function as.
And opposition is always
opposition to the building, always opposition to the building. And it's fascinating that often that intimidation comes right when God has leaders to move forward, right when he has for us to start to build, right when he has, he gives us the prophetic word. We say yes and amen. And then the next day, boom, here's the spirit of intimidation. And so I think that's a real fascinating thing.
Which could look like what I would call opportunity aversion. You know, it's like, you know, you say yes to God. You know, it happens to me quite often. You know, I say yes to God. I book the flights. I then go, and then as I get closer to what I say, I don't want to go.
What am I doing?
I don't want to go. What am I doing? Yeah. Oh no! I spent all of this money, and this, you know, it's like we can't afford it. All that sort of stuff. And so every reason, and that I think that's one of the places of which you were saying before, Malvina, is that we defeat those things by saying simply something like "shut up," you know, shut up, you know, like shut those voices up. It's like it's just there is this place in which we have this power to resist. God says, submit to me and resist the devil. When you submit yourself to God, when you're submitting to what he has said, when you're submitting to the vision, when you're submitting to the very thing, you have a power to resist.
Yep. Well, and there's something, I think, around this sentiment of, I've been given a vision, God's told me to build, and the enemy sees the agreement, right? Because if we don't agree with it, the enemy doesn't care.
He doesn't care.
So, he sees the agreement that we have with the Lord, and he's got to try and fake authority. So the opposition actually came through fake authority, right? They were the governors. They were the people that were in charge of that area, but they didn't have the king's authority, right? And they kept threatening a different authority. They kept so. I think that look at Jezebel, right? That's a different authority, right? So I think it is interesting that sometimes the opposition actually that we will feel if you experience it in the natural, because sometimes it's just I deal with enough intimidation on the 6 inches between my temples, like I got enough work to do there. But sometimes we'll physically and that intimidation will manifest in the form of authority, right? Correct. That kind of tries to make sure that you don't move forward in that direction, right? And the beautiful thing about having example of a leader like Nehemiah, right, is that he's like, no, not going to go there. I'm not going in the temple. You're not going to get ambushed. I'm not going to listen to any of your accusations. I'm not going to pay heed to it. I'm just going to keep moving forward, right? Yeah. And that because the threats were empty.
Yeah, and also, again, he knew, he had prayed enough to know, I have to do this, He had no doubt that if I perish, I perish. Is kind of like Esther, you know what I mean?
Well, that's confidence.
No matter what. And again, I think it happens to Nehemiah after you've been a cupbearer for a while, okay? So I could drink the poison, after you've been in Babylon for a while. You really know the difference because you want freedom. I do believe that if I could speak for America, I know Mark is in Australia, we're too comfortable as a church because we have not been persecuted. We persecute each other in church, but we intimidate ourselves. I mean, there's plenty of
that's
that.
Right. Well, and that's where most intimidation ends up coming from.
Devil's work. But really, when you have been in Babylon for so long, and you realize, where is my God in this? And you know that the prophets have already said, you got to be out of there, okay? All of a sudden, you realize it was Babylon, not Persia, okay? I got to get out of here. I am sure Nehemiah was saying, the Lord is showing me I have to do it. And think about it. He was not a man trained to do what he was called to do either. No. I'm sure that was another accusation he had to deal with. But he knew he had no doubt. And I think that's what Eve messed up over there. It's the conversation. Did God really ask me to do this? When you say yes to it and for sure it's the Lord, I think that's the conviction that Mark was talking about, that will make you do the impossible in spite of the intimidation. Now, I do think the worst enemy is ourselves. A lot of the times we know when it's great to be angry at somebody else. The worst part is when you're your own source of intimidation, I think.
Yep.
Because, you feel very inadequate.
I've often noticed for me, I think this works when I start to identify what's going on, when I call it out, when I start to recognize that, oh wow, we must be for a good meeting today because this is an opportunity happening, or this intimidation's coming, or what is. When I start to identify it and say, I know what's going on here. This is confirming, this opposition is coming. So this must mean this is a God trip. This is a significant thing, that when I call it out, when I identify it, I think I can better deal with that because I understand where it's coming from. What I don't do so well is when I can't figure out why I'm feeling like this, and that's where I need help from other people to say, oh, well, that's intimidation. So really, oh yeah, it is,
Yeah.
it's like, and then I can say, oh, I know where that's coming from then, because I know the nature of God, so I know that's not coming from Him. And quite often the trick is that the enemy convinces us that it's us. So we're the problem, we're the fault. It's all us. It's your feeling. You're feeling
That's
this or whatever
so good, Mark.
And most of the time it isn't. Most of the time it's not. It's an external thing that's coming upon us.
What's one of the things, like, I'll just mention this real quick. Don York is going to go to Greece with a friend of ours, Elizabeth Reisinger. Is that right, Don? I believe you're going with Elizabeth, who's an evangelist extraordinaire, right? Like healing evangelist and just amazing. She's been based. Don was up here last fall, and we had a wonderful time. So, and she says, I still don't fully understand it. And I think that the yes, right? This is why the devil looks for the agreement, right? We don't have to understand it, but we have to agree with what the Lord has said. And so we don't need to know, right? And I think Annalise got an excellent comment here. I'm going to put this up. It's kind of a longer one. But she puts together that Nehemiah risked his life for the king every day, drinking from the king's cup before the king did to see if it was poison. He already knew what it was like to not love his life unto death. So when God called him, he was well prepared to just move forward no matter what. What's interesting, I was thinking, like, how many times have we dismissed or dismissed or downplayed the training that God has given us to not love our lives unto death? And we treated it, that season, as if, it was the dark night of the soul, or, it was this. And we kind of lament it instead of celebrating that season for being part of that place where I found His faithfulness in those places.
Come on.
So I just thought that was interesting, because that actually steals your soul, right? That actually gives you faith. It gives you confidence, right? It gives you those things when you've been through those seasons of, I'm risking my life today for the Lord, just to wake up and do my thing. And I'm, I don't know where you are, Lord, but anything could happen, So
Peter, Peter DeWitt, I noticed at Sandpoint consistently, time and time again, that when you open your mouth to say something, I felt an authority on there like that I've not seen before.
100%. So good.
It's like, I've heard you speak before, and it's always been good. And like, here's the teacher, it's just like, this is revelational. But I felt an authority. So obviously you've stepped into some places, fresh places. What have you done, or what has become revelational to you that's dealt with some of this intimidation?
I think a lot of things, and you guys have all been a part of that. But one is what Chris just said. Great question, Mark. Is I think that we don't like to be in the situations that burn the fear of man out of us, but those end up being a gift to us. So I think that it comes with testing. Like, I think that when I think about public speaking, for instance, I've always liked public speaking to some extent, but I'm also, like everybody else, you're intimidated to speak in front of public to some extent. But at some point, your 500th hour of speaking in front of public, you are in a different spot than you were when you started that. So I think sometimes we just have to embrace the stretching and the process of the flexing of those muscles and having hard conversations, or having someone be upset with you, even though you know that you're supposed to stand your ground or whatever else. So I think some of it's the repetition. The other thing that was really helpful to me with dealing with the spirit of intimidation is actually, I feel like I got a verse for it recently, like after the fact. And it's from Nehemiah chapter 6. And I feel like this describes a breakthrough that I've had. And so Nehemiah 6, Sanballat and Geshem and Tobiah are trying to get Nehemiah down into the valley of Ono to have a conversation with them. Nehemiah, exactly. Nehemiah rejects that conversation like 4 times or something like that. And then the 5th time, apparently that's not enough. And then Sanballat sent his servant before me and with an open letter and says, it's reported among the nations, and Geshem says that you and the Jews plan to rebel. Therefore, according to these rumors, you're rebuilding the wall that you may be king. You've appointed prophets to proclaim you concerning concerning it Jerusalem, saying, this is the king of Judah. Now these matters will be reported to the king. So now we got a threat too. So come, therefore, let us consult together. I realized that for years the spirit of intimidation was trying to gain my conversation. And now it says, then I sent to him saying, no such things as you say are being done, but you invent them in your own heart. And I think that's the major breakthrough that I've had. One of the major breakthroughs is the ability to be able to say for myself, no such thing that you say is being done, and to not be gaslit by the spirit of intimidation. The spirit of intimidation loves to gaslight and redefine reality for the people that it's making accusation against.
Yes.
And so I've been able to come out of that space of that spirit of intimidation, often trying to get me to have a conversation, because if the spirit of intimidation can gaslight you and say, you don't know what's going on, this is what you're actually doing. Now that spirit of intimidation has gotten me in a conversation that's actually taking me off the course that God set before me. And so I've learned to be able to speak the truth about the real data of the situation, the real data, and be able to say, no such things as you say are being done. And then I love what Nehemiah says there, next verse. They were trying to make us afraid, saying their hands would be weakened in the work and it will not be done. And I love this prayer then. Now, therefore, O God, since they tried to intimidate me, basically, strengthen my hands.
Amen.
And so I'd say that's been a big part of my breakthrough.
So, Peter, can I just ask you a question from some of us older people? What do you mean by gaslighting?
Well, I think that gaslighting tries to tell you that what you see isn't real, or tries to redefine reality for you.
Okay.
And it's from an old movie.
Is it?
Yeah, it's from an old movie where actually the husband was trying to get the wife's inheritance from her. And so, or something like that. And so he had to get her institutionalized as crazy. So this is back when you would turn the gas up for all the lights would get really big, right? And so he would go and he would crank the gas and the gas lights would go up and they'd be like, and she'd start to panic and freak out and he'd turn it back down and walk in the room and go, what is it? And she'd be like, the gas lights, like, you're crazy. That's not happening. It's not real, right? So he kept creating situations for her. That's where the word gaslight, creating a situation where, like, you see, like, you're being told you're crazy. You're not seeing it. You're not, it's not real, And so it's that.
And this is what the spirit of intimidation often 100%. Does. Is it feeds you an accusation. You're trying to rebel against the king, Nehemiah. And if Nehemiah engages that conversation, he'll start to think that he's in rebellion, like he'll lose much of reality. But Nehemiah brilliantly says, no such things that you say are being done. You're just trying to intimidate me from the work. And I feel like that's something that for some reason I had struggled with for years, the ability to call that sort of thing and not engage in that conversation. And as I've learned to stay out of that in my heart, in my head, I feel like what it's allowing is there to be momentum in the authority that I'm operating in, as opposed to fits and starts in the authority that I'm operating in.
Right. Yeah. Cool. So Annalise says, Mark, I noticed something similar about you in your Sunday morning messages.
Come on.
So that's from Annalise.
Yeah, it was that's great you've seen that, because that's been something that I've been seeking after, is to have that greater freedom and confidence. And again, I think that's partly because I think that when we embrace our identity and actually get healed in that, there is less place for some of those things to impact us, because they hit it and there's no place to land. There's no wound to sit in. There's no sore spot to press. So it doesn't have the same effect on us. And I think that's continuing a place whilst we submit to God and resist, whilst we have those views that you're talking about, Peter. There's also a place where we get healed but there's no place for a curse to land on. There's no place for something
causeless curse
to land on.
I think the other point to what Peter and what Finnish Marx is saying is, so he was talking about practicing for several, after you do it 500 times, well, you don't have fear of public speaking. But I think there's also, when you have a revelation that God has given you, like all of a sudden it becomes very real, or your own personal testimony. No one can take it away because it is yours. There's a power in that. And I think what Analia saw in Mark on Sunday, he had a revelation on that subject. He was speaking on Sunday that we've seen him speak differently too on that specific you know what I mean? Like there is something that when you own it and you internalize it, then all of a sudden you speak with a different authority because it's become real for you, or it's exploded inside of you. So it's not just a message, a sermon you prepare for a moment or a speaking moment. The worst thing that can happen, even though we talk a lot, the worst thing is that you put on the spot and now you got to come up with something. Although we can always come up with something, but there is an authority when you know that you know what you're talking is what God has told you. No one can take that away from you. And I think there is an authority that comes, that weighs when it's yours.
Yeah, come on. So good. So good. One of the things. Oh, go ahead.
Chris. No, you go, Chris.
Okay. So one of the things that I think is really, kind of that I'm seeing is that because there was a process of overcoming intimidation, right? And we went, Peter, you had to go through a pretty severe process of overcoming that spirit. And so have I, so have all of us, right? We've had to go through that season where, we just kind of settle into, I say yes to the vision and I'm going to build, right? Like,
come on,
like it or not, here I am. It's going to happen. Right? And one of the things that's interesting that I think is one of the direct fruits of a strong yes is favor.
Come on.
One of the direct fruits of saying yes is that God begins to build for you.
Woo.
Right? It's not that you are the builder. God builds for you, which means that he opens the door and he's providing favor and resource and all of those things. And so when I see a wane in resource, right, I'm like, okay, like I come back to my yeses, right? Like
that's a good word.
The thing that had set apart the last season for me was the quiet place, right? And it's probably the thing that'll set aside all my seasons for the Lord, right? Is the quiet place. So I noticed that there's a financial strain. There's even at the church, there's some different strains and different things that are going on. I'm like, wait, okay, how am I doing in my quiet place? Right? So I think that there are certain things that the Lord takes us back to that are foundational pieces. Malvina, you talk about vision. We talk about the yes, we talk about some of this, but there's these places that God has for us where we are the most teachable, where we can receive the most, where we actually get revelation the most. And there's the most favor lands upon us because we do have a yes, and it's rooted in intimacy, not performance.
Mark, what did you have before?
I can't remember what I said. I was going to say. I know what I was going to say.
That effect on. Oh, darn it.
I don't know whether I'm just obsessed with this lately. Probably I am. It really is about perspective. I think that Malvina and I talked about this last week. We talked about seeing from heaven to earth. We're seeing from that place. The difficulty is that we've been trained to see that we are trying to get something, that we're trying to to obtain something. Much the church is trying to become righteous when they're already righteous. They're trying to, if you're trying to get abundance, when you when you consider lack, when you entertain lack, when you have an identity of lack, and many people have that because they've been established in it for so long that it's very difficult to obtain abundance. But if you come across people who have been trained in abundance, they don't see lack. They don't see lack anywhere. They don't even consider lack. They don't even consider because they've been trained in that. And I think our issue is that we are having to change, and that's what the scripture tells us, that we're transformed by the renewing of our mind. We are positionally seated in heavenly places. It's just that we don't think from heavenly places towards earth. We're always trying to get something. We're always trying to become righteous. We're always trying to get abundance. We're always trying to get provision. We're always trying to get healed, or we're trying to get this, et cetera, et cetera. And we have to change the way that we see things. It's like we said last week, there's no such thing as darkness. It's just the absence of light. And that's how you get darkness, is you just exclude the light. God didn't make darkness. He made light. He said, let there be light. And the Hebrew word actually means the withholding. Darkness actually means the withholding of light. So I think that we can see that for every single thing. It's like, I would even dare to say there's no such thing as sin, even though we see the expression of it. It's the absence of righteousness. It's the absence of righteousness.
That's pretty. Missing the mark counts, right?
Anything done apart from faith. It's interesting, Mark. You said something before we came on, and I see if I get the phrase right. But you said that's not normal anymore.
No.
And,
it's not normal. Yeah, that's what he said.
And I really feel like I'm piecing something together where there's I think many of us have broken past or breaking past intimidation. It's definitely an arise and build season. And I think some old ways are not going to, and Fiorella Giordano gave a word, I think that was related to this. I think some old ways, we're not going to just break through them. I think that it's like they're not even going to be normal anymore, like Mark was saying. There's something about coming out of the place that we've been and into a new territory of favor, like you're talking about, Chris, where like the old ways, I feel like God is wanting to disassociate us from some old ways of thinking where we aren't just breaking through them, but actually it's not going to be normal anymore. Like the reference frame, I think that's what I was picking up from what you're saying, Mark, like the reference frame change. It's not breaking through within an old reference frame. It's a reference frame change, I feel like, is what I hear you say.
Yeah, and I mean, I like to think about something along these lines. In Romans chapter 8 verse 14, it talks about that we didn't receive a spirit of religious duty that causes us to be in a place where we don't measure up, but we did receive a spirit of full acceptance. What full acceptance? What would it look like? What would it look like if the church so embraced that in a church, any church, but a church that we were associated with, everybody in there was walking in full acceptance. So what it meant was that rejection it wasn't normal. It was insecurity wasn't normal. All of these sorts of things that we experience as normal behaviors were no longer normal. And it was it's like living in that place where you see in the beginning of Jesus' ministry, he went around and he healed everybody. What would it look like if there was no sickness? What would it look like if it was not normal to be sick? If it come flu season or flu time, is that nobody got the flu, nobody got sick, because there was just so much health around. That there was no lack. There was no lack because that wasn't normal. What was normal was abundance, like over the top abundance. Ephesians 3:20 was normal, and I think there is a key to a place that our minds and our unconscious and subconscious mindsets are far more powerful than we give realization to. And so what if we started to say we want to see a new normal, and the new normal is this.
Yeah.
You know, the new normal looks like this. And so we don't have any toleration anymore of the things that we've tolerated.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. Yeah. It's so interesting.
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
You can see so many, like I would say that our community does a really good job of loving on people and accepting them, and I feel like we do a pretty good job of that. And I don't say that boastfully, but I know that that's something we strive for. And so it's really interesting, you know, people could be with us for a really long time and they're just waiting for rejection. They're just waiting for that thing to happen, you know? And so we're like, you keep waiting, it ain't gonna happen. Like, you know, obviously we say, you know, we love you, there's nothing you can do about it. But the other thing that I tell people all the time is you can't mess this up. You can't mess it up. Like whatever mistake you make, whatever thing, like we're not going anywhere. We will be loyal and steadfast to you. And I think it's so foreign. It's so foreign that people are still looking. Like, so we do have to, like, even in a community where we've set our mind to this mindset, right? That no matter what comes, we're not going to run. We're not going anywhere. We're going to dig our heels in for each other. And so that mindset, we're just punching against the rock in that, but yet that's part of the transformation that has to happen is because it's got to not just be a thing in the mind, it also has to transcend into the culture.
Yes, and you know that putting things in perspective seasonally, so in God's timing, like by Friday we celebrate Pentecost in the Hebraic calendar. I think it's Sunday for the Christian church. But if you look at the season, that's a period when you read the book of Ruth. And the reason why you do that is because you're in a wheat harvest, you're in the spring, it's the third month, whatever. So you look at Ruth. But when you look at Ruth from what Chris just described, what you have is Naomi. I mean, they have nothing. Okay, everybody's dead. There's a famine. We're all in rejection. So what do you expect? There's no food. We're cooked. Everybody's dead. So there's really very little hope. But Naomi, I've always seen her as very apostolic, and I hate to beat the apostolic horse again and again and again. I do believe we're moving in an apostolic season. Not as prophetic. We are going into building. That's why it's a season of the mouth to speak, because you got created with the mouth. So if the word that we have repeated in show after show is arise and build, we need to start speaking so this thing becomes a reality. But Naomi was one that decided we're going to go this way. Now, Ruth didn't have to go with her, but she chose to. And she listened to Naomi's instructions. So if you put Naomi as an apostle, just to give her a title, she was the one who said, just go get dressed. You got to go get the stuff. But at first, where did she go? She went to the welfare outside to get the poor, the left behind, the gleaning, the leftovers. That's the mentality Chris just described. We expect the rejection. We expect the gaslighting. We expect the
and life serves us some lemonade, man. I mean, life is hard.
We try to make it in the outside circle so we don't get hurt. But what did Naomi do apostolically? She spoke and said, listen, go get dressed, clean yourself up with some perfume, get yourself prettied up, and go. I mean, after all, she proposed to the guy in a Hebraic culture. That means she was giving a vision of something she has never, it wasn't even her culture. Okay? Because she's a Moabite. So a foreigner is gone in there to ask for something. First, she doesn't deserve it. Second of all, you know, I mean, she broke all the protocols. Okay, but yet she was able to take advantage. She becomes the great grandmother of King David. Okay, this is how good she gets it. So to me, that's the apostolic season we're going in. Are we really going to be so visionary? You need an apostle to give you vision, not a prophet. Prophet can tell you a lot of things, but an apostle needs to be able to facilitate that. Naomi didn't go with her. You know, a lot of time we're waiting for such and so, come with me and you can put in a good word for me. No, you go do it. You have to have somebody who says, listen, we're in here for you. Go get it. You're going to get it. Yes, there are things that needed to happen for that deal to close. But the point I'm trying to make is they went to the house of bread. They went to Bethlehem to get the provision. We're talking about if it's poverty, if it's positioning yourself. She positioned herself in a genealogy that you couldn't make it happen by law. And yet it was so incredibly amazing. So to me, that's the season we're in. This weekend is that. And if we start behaving, we're talking about changing culture. That's what an apostle does. We need to reform things to start believing we, the church, are the solution. If we want to build, we have to, what are the solutions? And I do pray this show becomes that. Can we give people the excitement to step into things that rebellion, because she was in rebellion. She did things because Naomi told her, listen, go ahead, do the following things. And I think we lack a little bit of that father, mother, whatever, to direct us. So we are not gleaning and expecting the rejection or the lack of, I don't know why I went there. But I felt
so
like
Linus, that's excellent. Linus mentioned that part of it might be people looking for an offense, right? Oops, sorry.
Seek and you'll find.
And then, look and you'll find. And then Don says, it's a trauma response sometimes, or a familiar spirit repeating a pattern.
Amen.
Right. Yeah. And yes, absolutely. That is the case. And Emily says, you're right, Don. That's why we have an inner healing deliverance ministry at church. Amen. Linus points out here, she says, still, we don't leave our assignments, maintain our focus on him. Our faith is tangible. We must stay connected to the vine. Amen. As you were going there, hallelujah. Yes, sister, from Alex. That's so great. And then she was so bold to go and lay at his feet. Don, you're absolutely right. And this season, we talk about, what does intimidation try to prevent? Bold. It tries to prevent us from doing the things that are bold. If you can just stay in the plain Jane vanilla, just make sure that you're, just keep it in line and you'll be fine. That's what the spirit of intimidation wants you to do. Just go about business as usual. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, Mark, what you got?
Well, what I was going to say is I think our time is pretty well up. We've tonight talked really about intimidation, some things that we've learned, some things about identity, and and what we've just been talking about significantly there. I think it's an issue. I think what our prayer is that people would experience a new normal.
A new normal.
That we, I think for a new season, you need a new normality. You need a new standard or a new frame of reference or a new grid.
So good.
And I think that we've gone into a new place because we've come out of a wilderness. That we're in a new season, and that's why there's new perspectives coming out. That's why there's new views and new understanding, and that's part of the transformation. And that's our prayer. That's our prayer as we finish today, is that our prayer is that people will feel a shift, a change in their thinking, and that new normals will be established.
Yes.
The new normals will be in line with the season.
Come on.
Will be in line with heaven. Will be in line with where the Father's taking us.
Yes.
So that's our prayer.
Yes.
Come on.
Amen.
That's anointed. That's good.
Awesome. It's good. Well, Peter, we are going to miss you for the next few months, but man, we bless your rest.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
And I believe there's going to be such tremendous fruit from this season. I think especially for your children, because I don't think we fully realize the toll that ministry takes on our kids. So I think it's going to be really a blessing for them to have that really sweet time, that's planned time, that's, it's not just, you're not winging it, but you're actually setting an agenda for your time. And so we just bless that. We're so excited for you guys. And we're looking forward to seeing you in La Barge.
Send pictures of the fish.
Okay.
And the flies.
And the flies.
And the flies.
I tie the flies.
Oh.
I thought you were fishing them. I thought it was fly fishing. Come on.
So the pictures of the flies could be of interest too.
Yeah.
They could for a lot of people. Like, what?
Amen.
Yes.
Amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, we love you guys.
Blessings.
Everybody have a great day. Okay, we'll see you next week.
All right.
Amen.